Hello, and welcome to this edition of Profession in Focus. I'm Cindy Fernelli, the Executive Director of the Center for Audit Quality, and I'm pleased to have as my guest today Candy Duncan. Candy is the chair of Teleflex Audit Committee, as well as sitting on the Audit Committee of both Discover Financial Services and FTD companies. And you also serve as the co-chair of the Washington, D.C. chapter of Women Corporate Directors. So very expert in the field of audit committees and the boardroom. So thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So I want to jump right in because I have a lot of ground I want to cover. And first off, I want to ask you, we all know that the new PCAOB auditors reporting model standard has come out, and the critical audit matter piece of it, that phase of it is going to go into effect for large accelerated filers next year. So I'm curious what you've been hearing in the boardroom at the audit committee. Have you been having discussions with your auditors around dry runs that they're all running?
We have, Cindy, and for example, on two of my boards, we've actually seen a mock-up of what that opinion would look like so that we can be knowing what to expect. So far, no surprises, and I think that that's what we're all hoping for.
So, do you think, you said no surprises and the expectations, do you think investors have expectations or realistic expectations of what the auditor's report will look like? And do you think they'll find it helpful learning more about these critical audit matters?
You know, I think investors know what is coming. I think that, we've had in the 10Ks for years what the critical accounting matters and estimates were. So I really don't think it's going to be anything that surprises them. And that's the way it should be.
Now I want to shift focus a little bit and talk about something that is maybe a little uncomfortable for companies, whether you're talking about cybersecurity breaches all the way to the Me Too movement, where we've seen a number of high-level executives in companies resign because they've had a scandal associated with that movement. I'm curious, more and more reputational risk, or headline risk, if you will, must be something that's discussed in the boardroom. Tell me a little bit about how the audit committee's role would be in assessing that kind of risk in a company.
You know, risk really falls to the whole board, and depending on the types of risk, it may come to the audit committee. Lots of boards have more than just audit committee shouldering the risk. For example, banks have to have a separate committee that is the risk committee. I think it's really important that you evaluate the culture and that the board be aware, and that if something is raised, that it's appropriately addressed. And I don't see it just being an audit committee risk. I think it's an entire board.
Full board sport, so to speak. So, we both have something in common. We were both Kansas girls.
Absolutely.
Yes? Now, you were raised on a farm. I was not. But I've heard you talk about how that's been very fundamental to who you are, and how that upbringing has helped you in this stage of your life. Tell us a little bit more about that.
You know, Cindy, I was fortunate. I did grow up on a farm east of Wichita, and I learned at a very early age there wasn't anything you couldn't do. And that might have meant knowing how to drive the tractor, if that was what was needed. Clearly, I knew how to do that way before I knew how to drive a car. And I think I carried that with me as I started my career in public accounting and advanced along the way. I was just brought up to know if you want something, go for it, and don't let anything stand in your way.
And good hard work, right?
And good hard work, it pays.
That good ethic.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, and it has clearly stood you well. So, speaking of that, you are one of just 2 women who were on the professional staff when you were at KPMG in public company accounting. And you also are a minority now in sitting on Fortune 500 company boards. So how can we as a society work together to get more diversity on the board, to get more women on the board? We talk about it all the time, and yet those numbers are moving so slowly. And I know that's something that you focus on at Women Corporate Directors.
It is, and the numbers are moving. That's a good thing. And I think it's really up to each and every one of us to mentor others, to help promote other women. One of the things I try to do is meet with women that are wanting to get on boards and just give them a little bit of insight on how the process really works. I think that helps prepare them. Also, I think you need to be strategic in knowing where you'll fit, where you'll be an asset, where you can add value. I mean, everyone wants to add value to the boards that they sit on and the work that they do. I also think if you're in a position where maybe a board isn't right for you, maybe you already have, 3 boards and you're boarded up, my term, you think of someone else to suggest. I've had the opportunity to do that twice in the last year or so, and both the women that I suggested did end up on those boards. So I think we've got to think broader. I think we've got to think about our networks and know what's going to work and be out there trying to help and assist.
Well, very good advice. And I know at the CAQ you've been very giving of your time with us, whether it's doing this Profession in Focus video or being on panels with us. So I really appreciate that you walk the walk and talk the talk. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And with that, this concludes this version of Profession in Focus. Thank you so much for joining us.